I love therapy, and in fact, I've been going to therapy since I was around 6 years old. Though I talk about therapy a lot and may interview some therapists on the show on occasion, nothing that is said in this podcast should be considered a replacement for therapy. If you are struggling, I urge you to please seek guidance from a therapist because you are absolutely worth it. Hello, everyone. You are listening to Wine, Dine, and 69, a podcast about dating, relationships, sex, and self-love. I am your host, Rachel Dalton, and I hope everybody's doing well. As always, when this episode comes out, I will be in a car with my boyfriend driving up to New York to swing up and pick up my brother before heading up north to meet the rest of my family for a very, very needed vacation. So very much looking forward to that. Okay, I have a listener question that I am chomping at the bit to get to, so we're just going to jump right into that. Hey, love the show. Was wondering what your thoughts are on the new Netflix show, Sex Life. Okay, so I hadn't heard, the only thing I'd heard about this show prior to being sent this DM was about the giant dick that is in the third episode. And my boyfriend and I actually went ahead and watched that scene, found that timestamp just to see if it was as big of a deal, as we were told that it would be, that the internet was telling us that it would be. And I was a little disappointed. It's not like it was small, but I don't know if the internet just types it up too much or if, I've just been really, really lucky. But yeah, I kind of was more focused on that scene in the husband's butt, which was really cute and perky. So anyway, okay, but I actually watched the show after getting this message. And oh boy, do I have thoughts. I actually kept a running, like a little diary on my phone of all of my stream of consciousness thoughts. And okay, so the show is about this woman named Billy who has an absolutely charmed life. She's married, has 2 kids, lives in the suburbs, lovely life. But the one problem is that she keeps having these fantasies, thinking about her past dalliances with her ex-boyfriend, Brad. Okay, so thing about this character, Billy, that I find really fascinating is that she was in the process of pursuing a PhD in psychology, and yet she proceeds to not communicate, make awful decisions, and just kind of in general, like, flounder in life at every step of the way. And, I understand that people who have a psychology background have issues too. In fact, some people say that they have more issues. But it just seemed really interesting to me that this person was making the choices that she was when it came to communicating, when it came to actual actions, when it came to being impulsive. It didn't line up for me. I thought that it was poor writing. The show is also problematic, and I found myself screaming at my computer screen multiple times. She said no. I don't care if you think that she might say yes if you beat her down over time. She said no. She said, I am in a marriage and I want to protect my marriage. I have kids. I love my family. If she said that, you need to leave her the fuck alone. I screamed so many times to leave her alone. There's also a scene where the husband doesn't listen to her when she's saying stop. It's just, I actually wrote in my notes, I said, I honestly thought I would be more turned on by this. I was dry as a desert, y'all. I was not turned on at all. I just couldn't stop thinking about how it didn't make sense. All the poor decision making, how the ex-boyfriend, Brad, the Australian guy, really wasn't as hot as she was making him out to be. And just, okay, so here's another thing. I have pretty strict moral lines when it comes to infidelity. For me, I just don't understand the loss of self-control, which is what I know that there are other reasons why people commit infidelity. It really just felt like she wasn't in control, and the focus of this potential infidelity that she was dancing with, she didn't actually take a physical leap into infidelity, though she was absolutely emotionally cheating. I don't know. It just, I really, really struggled with it. I really, really struggled with it. And you know, this woman has this great life. I'm not saying that people who have a charmed life don't have their own issues. They definitely do. But I don't know. It read as like really bad writing. And what ends up happening is this woman is writing the notes in her diary, reflecting on all of her past sexual rendezvous with her ex-boyfriend, and her husband reads it. And my first thought was, oh, if this is actually a story about rekindling a romance between a husband and wife, I think that's really sweet. If like this is the thing, like maybe this guy is a cuck fetish, and like maybe he does actually if you watch a little further, but maybe this guy has a cucking fetish. Like who knows? Maybe this is like what it needs to spice it up, because he really liked reading. That's the thing. He ends up finding it and reading it. He really liked reading it, even though it kind of made him sick at the same time to think of her with other men. So here's my thing though, and this goes back to the poor decision making. She finds out that her husband reads it, and she doesn't change where she's writing it. She continues to write in the same journal, in the same place, in the same journal entry, the same document. And the husband keeps reading it. And okay, here's the thing. If you know that he's reading your journal entries, why the fuck are you still writing them in the same place? There's such a thing as like the first time that it happened where it was an accident, and you know, you kind of got this positive conditioning or positive reinforcement out of it, and you know, your sex life got a little bit better. But then there's just cruelty. And I'm sorry, but like writing all of these things when you know that your husband is probably reading it, it's just really, really cruel. And I don't know. I had a really, really hard time relating to her or feeling for her in any way. And I take the husband over the bad boy. I think they were both problematic, but I think this is a reflection of how much I've grown over this last decade. And as I mentioned, the husband does have a better ass. The really heartbreaking thing about this is that both of the people in this marriage really do seem to want to make this marriage work. They just need to fucking communicate and go to couples therapy, and they each need their own therapist as well to work out their individual shit. I always say that. I'm like, get a couples therapist, but also you should have your own therapist, because like you have your own personal shit and then you have your couple shit. Work it out. So, okay, I'll play. Let's say that she did make a mistake and she married the wrong person. It does not justify these behaviors. There is a right and a wrong way to end a marriage, and this is not the right way to do it. And I know I have a holier than thou attitude over this. It's zero tolerance, and I know that life isn't that simple, isn't that black and white. So I'm not going to spoil it. I'm not going to spoil the end. But the end was infuriating to me. I was like, oh, maybe this show is going to surprise me. It started looking like it. It started looking like maybe this show is going to surprise me. And the last note that I have written down in here is motherfucker in all caps. Yeah. I'm going to link, I found a thing on Instagram that talks about the problematic things about this show. I'm going to link it because I just said a lot, but I think it could kind of break it down into easier written bullet points, much better than I just did. So here's the takeaway about the show that I appreciate. And it's what Esther Perel talks about. This conversation about stability versus the rush. Can one person give you both? Can you have a stable partnership and also have good sex? Or are those two things not compatible? And I don't know. I mean, I think about this a lot, you know, being a long-term relationship person, having been in a number of long-term relationships and, you know, wanting to get married someday and have a healthy sexual romantic life with my partner. I would love to get people's thoughts on what do you think? How do you keep that spark alive? And is it possible to keep that spark alive in a long-term marriage? Or is it more, what I suspect, ebbs and flows, where there's going to be some really hot and heavy times and then, you know, there might be a lull for a while? It's an interesting conversation point, and I wish that the show had focused a little bit more on that as their underline rather than, you know, the sex. I appreciate a show that is lifting up sex and, putting dicks on television. Hey, you love to see it. But I don't know. I thought that this could have been something else, a bigger conversation. And there were some small little moments of that in the show that I really, really appreciated. But I felt like it was completely overshadowed. And that was a disappointment to me because I thought that I was going to be pleasantly surprised. And I wasn't. So speaking of Esther Perel, she has a new card game out called Where Should We Begin, which is based on the same title as her podcast. And it's a card game that you do with a partner and have those deeper questions, have those conversations, get connected again on a deeper level, maybe bring that spark back. Again, going back to that, how do you combine, the stable relationship and the spark, the rush, the, in some senses, danger? How do you have it all? And that is something that is repeated a lot in sex life. How do you have it all? Can you have it all? Interesting questions that they explore here. We're going to see. There's a second season. I'm not sure if I'm going to watch it. I'm really not sure. We'll see. But I'll be interested to at least read and see if they explore these thoughts more in depth because it was a little bit of a letdown in the first season. Okay. Well, you've gotten my overview of sex life for the past 12 minutes, it looks like. And we're going to talk more about sex in the second half of the episode today. Yay. So my guest is Jonam Ross, who is an erotic hypnotist. And I had no idea what that was, no idea what that meant. But I learned about it all. I actually did a meditation, two meditations that he sent me ahead of time to kind of get acquainted with the practice. And we have a super cool conversation about power and surrender. Yeah, I really hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think. Thanks to Jonam for coming on and being a guest and talking with me about this. I loved learning from you. All right, y'all, I am signing off here. I have to go pack. And I have a very limited amount of time left to do that. So I will see you all next week, talk to you all next week for my bonus episode. And take care. Here's my interview with Jonam. Do you find yourself struggling between the choices of playing the latest video games you got for Christmas or debating Aunt Fanny about religion over Christmas dinner?
Do you find yourself trying to work video games into your school papers, Sunday sermon, or next book proposal?
Do you wish you had more people to argue with about the hidden philosophical meaning of your favorite RPG?
Well then, nerds, we are the podcast for you.
No Avatars Allowed is a podcast about video games, theology, and all things cultural and intellectual.
Oh, and we talk about sex a lot, too.
Our hosts Rachel Dalton, Ben Wallace, and Joshua Wise figure out each week how on earth to cram video games into some kind of bigger discussion.
And mostly, we make it work.
Check us out every Saturday morning on allportsopen.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
So grab your controller, that unused copy of Thomas Aquinas that's sitting on your shelf, and maybe a negligee, and come join us for what is certain to be an interesting and strange conversation on No Avatars Allowed.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I am here today with my guest, Jonam Ross. Jonam, how are you?
Oh, I'm splendid. It's sunny over here in the UK, so we're celebrating, and it's beautiful.
I bet. It's usually rather rainy, isn't it?
Yeah. So
that makes sense.
Got shorts on, we're sunbathing. It's a national holiday, so.
That's amazing. I love that. So let's start off with you, just as a good jumping off point. Tell me a little bit about you. We're going to be talking about erotic hypnosis today, which I'm really excited to get into. So tell me about who you are, what you do, and how did you get into this field of work?
Yeah, big questions. So obviously my name is Jonam, and on the ship, so I used to work as an erotic hypnotist on several cruise ships and
cool.
at some of the resorts, for Desire and these kind of alternative lifestyle and swinger groups. So it was obviously a big hit there. And the way that people remember my name, because it's a weird name, so I have to keep reminding people. So in the end, it was look, it's like Jonah, Jonah and the whale,
Mm-hmm.
but but more delicious. So there's an at the end. And from that point, it all skyrocketed. So I've been obsessed with hypnosis and psychology and just human behavior since my early teens. Darren Brown came out in the UK. I don't know if you really see much of him over there, but mentalism and psychology and NLP. And at first it was self-help. At first, I was just wanting to make my life better, make other people's lives better. And eventually I ended up down this rabbit hole of just finding things that were more and more powerful. And then pairing that with my lifelong fascination with relationships, obviously obsessed with sex as a youngster, because who isn't? And and so all these things came together, and I found erotic hypnosis. I saw a video of a guy who would go on to be my teacher, hypnotizing a woman. They're both fully clothed, sat in separate chairs, and she's having what seems to be a very convincing full body orgasm. And I was like, well, this seems cool. And as a as a teenager, I was a sex geek even while I was a virgin. I thought, well, this seems fun. Let's research it first, so that when it comes to it, we've got the best chance of enjoying it. And I saw these statistics about how well over like 50-60% of women are faking their orgasms in their relationships, and how dissatisfied the female population was. And I just realized how sad it was. So when I saw this, I was like, well, if this guy can do it without even touching someone, then this seems to be a skill worth adding. So I went down that rabbit hole, started learning it, then started doing it for real, and then seeing it work with people, and how it's not just a party piece. Obviously, it's a great party piece, but most importantly, it's like unlocking this confidence inside the person being hypnotized. It's where you can actually align with that sensual side of yourself, which may have been repressed, it may have been kind of contorted, it may have been abused in the past, just by being forced into a shape it wasn't meant to be. And by using these techniques, it actually helps you to become more confident, become more sensual, and become more happy with who you are. So it started off as this amazing firework display which got my attention, but it was really the soul beneath that of how powerful and how empowering it is for people to be able to express their sensuality and experience it fully as a force for good in their life rather than a source of shame. So that was really where it started.
That's incredible. And I love too that I think that sex is so frequently seen through the male gaze. So I love that you as a teenager was like, oh, I want to focus on like this. Like that's pretty cool. I like hearing that from guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I was terrified of being that guy who, because I had female friends who would talk as a group and with me. I was kind of a nice guy as a youngster. So I would be involved in these like just for the girls discussions. I'd hear how miserable they were. And it's like, oh yeah, he's great in this way and that way. And it's like, yeah, but is he getting the job done? And it's like, yeah, no. Right. And I just hated the idea of that being true. So
yeah, I love that focus. So we're talking about confidence. So one of my questions was, how does self-love and confidence play into erotic hypnosis? So you say that it unlocks this confidence, and do you mean that just like creates a vulnerability that allows the person being hypnotized to like get into that mental space?
Such a good question. So there are a couple of angles to it. One of the approaches that we use in this modality is a thing we call conditioning with pleasure, which is where, in a nutshell, we're getting rewarded by our minds, by our bodies, the more we do things that are actually good for us. So a lot of life is what I call punishment consciousness, where the less we do what's right for us, the worse we feel. The longer we procrastinate on going to the gym or doing our taxes, then we feel more and more stressed until we finally give in. It's like a pain-centric way of motivating ourselves. What we do instead is that we combine pleasure, and it doesn't have to be orgasm energy, it can be anything that feels good. We combine pleasure with the thoughts that are empowering for us to think, the beliefs that are empowering for you to have. So that then eventually, after a few sessions, our mind starts thinking, hey, every time I believe confident beliefs or think confident thoughts, I get this wonderful feeling. And so it's like training our mind to focus on the positives and move towards that.
Through association. Okay.
Yeah. So that's one angle of it. So we can build confidence very deliberately. So if someone says, I want to become more socially confident or a more powerful public speaker, then we can do it quite, I hesitate to say surgically, but we can target it in that way.
Okay.
The other way is more general, in that if any of us go into a place where you can feel completely safe to let go. You've got no responsibilities. You don't need to think or be or do anything. You've got no expectations placed upon you. You can finally just let go and just be taken care of. And then in that place, you're going inside and you're accessing parts of yourself, of your own nature, that are really beautiful, and parts that may have been kind of compartmentalized and
Sure.
pigeonholed away. And then you're getting more in touch with the aspects of yourself that make you feel alive and feel vibrant and feel wonderful. You go through an experience like that, confidence is a natural byproduct.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, what are some of the overall benefits, would you say, of, I mean, you've already listed a number of them, but like if you had to like sell somebody on it, what would you tell them?
I would say I don't usually have to sell people on it. Most people just hear, they're like, "Oh my God, sign me up." I'm like,
Right? It's fascinating.
You've not even heard the benefits yet. They're like, no, just do it. I would say that some of the overarching benefits are things don't bother us as much. Stress from the outside, stress from work, stress from social situations. We have stress release. There's ways of clearing negativity, of getting rid of distractions, of dealing with incidental things like just the stresses of life, and also putting the past to rest. A lot of us have a lot of baggage that we're carrying with us through life from previous relationships, from those first experiences where things were kind of clunky and we, maybe someone said something, or we saw our parents having arguments. And so we're carrying all these items of baggage with us that aren't useful for us. So in the work that I do, we're helping people to let go of those things in a very pain-free manner. It's not like, spill your guts and get through a whole box of tissues, re-traumatizing yourself, talking about it. It actually feels good. And it is healing in the negativity clearing. So all those old patterns, the old beliefs, those limiting ideas, and that negative chatter. So many people I work with, they come to me and they've got this voice inside their head that's saying, "Oh, what about this? What are you thinking about that?" Or "I wonder if such and such." And there's that constant distraction going on. So, well, no wonder you're not feeling good. Your body could be experiencing absolute bliss, but because your mind's on a different planet, it's nowhere near to the feeling. So by clearing out those old patterns, clearing out the old beliefs and letting go of the baggage, that then means that your hands are empty and ready to take hold of the pleasure that's actually your birthright.
I love that. I love that. The pleasure, that's your birthright. That's incredible. That's a great statement.
Yeah, I believe it too.
Yeah, that's and that mind-body connection. I mean, I completely understand and relate to that. Just having you, even just the sense of like you sit down, you want to relax, and then like the little voice in your brain like turns on. So I guess I wonder too, because meditation in general has been really good for me in that. But how does erotic hypnosis differ from just regular, meditation?
It's more directive. So with meditation, you're kind of in there on your own. Even if there's a guided meditation, you're very much in the driver's seat still. With hypnosis and with erotic hypnosis as well, you're you still have agency, right? You're not a mindless zombie, but you have less responsibility. You basically get to sit back, follow the instructions, and get the results. So it's a bit like going in for a massage or something. You don't have to do hardly anything on the massage table. You just lay there and get taken care of, and you feel great after it. This is a similar process to that. And another way that it differs is that it's very tailored to the individual's experience. So when I work with someone live, obviously we speak beforehand, there's a form they fill out beforehand. So I can really apply the things that I've learned from my behavioral engineering background, from my NLP background, and find out, okay, what's going to be the most powerful and empowering thing for this person. And so then we can very much tailor it to a person's unique psychology.
Interesting, because I mean, people go to erotic hypnosis for a number of reasons. People go for trauma healing, to create better sexual connections, and like you mentioned, to intensify orgasm. But like, how does, for you as the practitioner, how does your approach for each of those differ?
So between trauma, between relationship enhancement, between orgasm enhancement, and what was the last one you said?
Trauma healing, better sexual connections, and intensify orgasm. And I guess it's kind of a separate question, but I was going to ask because I know that it's used in BDSM as well.
Sure. Yeah, we can get to that. So when it comes to healing from trauma, I would say that's a lot more, obviously healing. It's a lot more gentle the way I'll go about it. So if someone has those kinds of things that they're needing to work through, we'll probably spend most of the time in the healing aspect and of letting go of the old things, of processing those experiences, and then building protection mechanisms that are healthy. Because we all have protection mechanisms. It's just that often they kind of half work, and so we end up tripping ourselves up down the line. So for healing from trauma, clearing out the old baggage and developing skills so that then in the future you won't re-traumatize, be re-traumatized. That's where a lot of the focus goes. And also, since a lot of sexual trauma is around being out of control,
sure,
there's a lot to be said for giving control back to the person. In fact, one person I worked with a few years ago now, it seems counterintuitive, but so using the hypnosis, we worked to the point where she could have what we call orgasms on command, which is obviously, it's a very powerful thing. But what was most powerful was later on in a later session, I basically made her say no. I made her not have the orgasm when I told her to say it. And basically gave her the choice where, look, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. Just because someone else is saying to do it, so just because someone else is putting the pressure on, you have the ability to say no, and just providing a frame of reference where she can say no and have it mean no and have it be respected.
Yeah, you're right. That it does seem counterintuitive that, somebody who was in a situation where they lost control with sexual trauma would go for hypnosis. But when you put it like that, it makes sense.
Yeah, it's all about like giving that power, giving that control back. And then, after that, obviously she can have as many orgasms as she likes. But that's exactly the point. It's giving the power back to the individual. So that's the main focus with that.
Okay.
With relationship enhancement, usually I'll tend to only work with one partner in the relationship, generally the woman, if it just because women tend to be more open to hypnosis. But sometimes I do work with couples, and I'll do these couples sessions. When I do that, the focus is more on helping them to like reconnect with the things that they love about each other. I've done quite a bit of work with, obviously over COVID, we have long distance couples who've not been able to see each other.
Oh, sure.
which sucks, you know. So how can you keep that connection and that sensuality, that spark alive, even during COVID restrictions? So we've used it for that a lot, and that aspect of relationship enhancement, kind of reconnecting with that spark, obviously feeling confident within yourself, but also seeing, seeing what's important to you about the person as well. So in relationship enhancement, that's how it tends to play out.
Interesting. Okay.
In orgasm enhancement, that's a lot of what I think you mentioned earlier, increasing that connection with your own body. So there's a fantastic book by Emily Nagoski called Come As You Are, which is wonderfully named, and it reads even better. And in there, she uses this great example of, if you're in a car and you're wanting to go faster, we always think, well, I'll slam my feet down harder and harder on the accelerator. But if the handbrake's on, we're going to end up in a worse situation. And it's a lot like that with relationships and with pleasure. So often we think, well, I'll buy these toys, I'll wear these outfits, I'll do all these different things. And yet if we've got these inhibitions still going strong, then, we're fighting a losing battle. So the first step is to really release all of the unnecessary inhibitions, all the things that were based on old experiences, old programming, old things our parents said, good girls, good boys, good humans don't do that kind of thing. Releasing that and getting to the point where, you actually have agency. And then once the inhibitions have been removed or, made within your control, then we can begin ramping up the acceptance, the openness to pleasure.
Yeah, there's definitely a big thing with shame. And I can see that, especially like people who maybe were growing up in a religious background and were told that, masturbating is bad, or that you shouldn't, have sex, or probably orgasms weren't even mentioned in that type of upbringing. But you shouldn't have sex until marriage. And then it should be with somebody that you love, yada, yada, yada. But I can see how taking those steps of just trying to dissociate from those preconceived notions that you have, whether like from yourself or from your upbringing, would be a really important part of that.
Well, there's something really important that you touched on there. Now, the body, we obviously have the immune system. So physically, it protects us, it takes care of us. There's a fascinating thing that happens. I swear this won't get too medical sounding, but when someone has an organ transplant, at first, the body accepts it. We always think it rejects it, but it doesn't. It accepts it for a while. And then, once the body, the immune system realizes, hey, hang on a minute, this isn't me, this isn't mine,
Right.
Then it starts rejecting it and trying to kick it out. Now, in that case, it's not such a great thing. But the mind does the same thing, and it can be really helpful. So we go through life and we're thinking these thoughts, holding these beliefs, these ideas about ourselves, about sexuality, about what's appropriate. And we think that that's us. It's been accepted. We think that these are our ideas. And yet when you stop and you think about it, there's a part of your mind that eventually realizes, hang on a minute, I didn't choose this. This isn't me. This is my parents' idea, or this is society's idea, or religion's idea. And so in the same way that the white blood cells go to work and start attacking these foreign objects in our physical system, your mind can begin going to work and searching out those old ideas, old programs and beliefs that actually aren't yours, that were just overlaid by someone else as a placeholder until you were able to make up your own mind.
Right. Like indoctrination rather than anything else.
Yeah. I do a lot of work with people who are recovering from religious indoctrination, even quite intense religious cults. And that's a huge part of it. And I describe it as being like, you're born, and as you go through life as a child, obviously you can't make up your own mind. You just don't have the information. So what happens? The situations and people around us, they give us the equivalent of hand-me-down clothes because we've got
Right.
no other option. And that's, there's nothing wrong with hand-me-down clothes. If that's what you need, then, you do it. You do what you have to get by. But then as an adult, if you're trying to wear the same hand-me-down clothes that fitted you as a 7-year-old, you're going to run into difficulties.
Right.
And so over the years and decades, we end up wearing this kind of patchwork of hand-me-down ideas and beliefs that weren't made for us. They weren't designed for us. They were just a placeholder because we needed something to go there, right?
Right.
So when you reach the point where you can actually tailor it to yourself.
That makes a ton of sense. And I love that analogy too. Yeah. Wow. Indoctrination. And part of me like wants to go off on a little side journey into the religious cults bit just because I find that stuff fascinating.
Yeah.
But I'll try to stay on task. I'm thinking that so I did a couple of your sessions that you sent me.
Yeah.
And in the first one you talked about surrender.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to talk about surrender and what that means and how it can be empowering, both
Yeah.
in like in erotic hypnosis, but also in sex in general.
Yes.
So let's kind of get into that.
Surrender. So it's such a misunderstood idea, or the way it's been defined for us. We often think of like a defeated military force, don't we? It's like there's defeat and degradation is often involved in the idea. The way that I approach it is where it's more about being strong enough, being brave enough to let go of the things that used to rob you of power. And this idea of even of having to be in control all the time. Well, that's often, if someone considers themselves as like a high control person, it's generally rooted in a state of fear or stress or anxiety. Like it's not coming from an empowered place; it's coming from a place of fear. And
Definitely.
so we have these fears. Think, well, if I let go, then I won't be safe. And so living in this survival state, we're feeling threatened as a mammal, right? Our brain is telling us we're under threat. And that's not a good place to be in. So when we actually have a scenario, and this works in erotic hypnosis, even just kind of vanilla hypnosis has this effect as well. But also in the kink world of BDSM and power exchange and things like that. It's like playing the trust game, where you fall backwards and someone captures you. It's a thrill, it's exhilarating. It also proves to you, hey, I'm safe. And so when we have an experience of being able to let go, where we don't have to hold on to everything, then and where we can be safe, and then we can come up out of it and take back the steering wheels of our lives and be better than we were before because we finally had a break. You try going without sleep for 5 days, see how well you go.
Right.
We need to let go sometimes. Everyone needs to slip off the leash sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's what this is. So you're not enslaved to having to be in control anymore. You can just let go. And so in that sense of surrender, of being able to let go of all the old distractions, being able to surrender up all the old responsibilities, all of the, well, I need to be this way and I should be that way and I should, move and think and speak in all these ways. We're surrendering those things so that then all you have to do is just be and just be yourself. So in that sense, we're surrendering, we're giving up all the things that are not you in order to get to what is you at your core.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think about like in terms of like kink or BDSM, I think about let's say like the CEO, the guy who's like the CEO, he's in charge, he's very like that's the stereotype, right? And then in his personal
Christian
life,
Grey.
yes, he might there are some people who might want that continue into their personal life, but there are some people who want to be dominated if they're more in control in their personal life. or
Yeah.
I'm sorry, in their professional life and their personal life, they might want more of a domineering partner, just because it's that chance to finally let go and finally surrender.
Yeah. So true. And it balances us out. It gives us that ability to change gears. If we try to do one thing again and again and again, we burn ourselves out. And so the freedom to experience that. And here's another thing. I work with a lot of mothers as well. So, you often get a woman who's working, maybe a wife, maybe, or, a partner, maybe not, maybe, having children. They've got all these responsibilities and all of these pigeonholes, all the different hats that they have to wear in all these other areas of life. And, you don't want to give those up. You're not going to just ditch your family and leave your job and just go live on an island. Life goes on. But at some point you have to have time just for you. And so in these sessions, we're creating a space where, look, the outside world's out there. It's fine. It's going to be there when you get back. But for now, you can just let go of it. And you can just focus on you, and you can just build yourself up. And it's in that freedom to let go, to see that everything's okay and they're okay. Then they can return to it with a new perspective.
Sure.
And feel, and you're bringing the best of yourself instead of being like, well, I'm spread too thin. I've got so many responsibilities. It's, I'm actually coming to this with a full tank.
Right.
So everyone gets the best of the situation, especially you.
Yeah, it's like a spa day for like mind, body, and soul.
Yeah.
That's really, it sounds relaxing. And I wonder too, this question just occurred to me. So would you call it a trance state when people are under hypnosis?
Yeah.
Okay, because I know that's what it is in like, mainstream hypnosis, but I wasn't sure if it was the case here as well. People remember. So like, I mean, it's not like this is somebody who, and if they're there for to intensify orgasm, it's not like this is somebody who goes and has a bunch of orgasms while in a trance state and then doesn't remember it when they come out, right?
No, and it's people often think they'll come out of an experience and they'll be like, "Man, that was amazing! I had this great experience, but I don't think I was hypnotized." And then I'm like, "Well,
Okay.
how could you think that?" Like, well, I heard every word you said, or I still remember it. And it's like, nah, Hollywood lied to you. It's not a zombie state. You're, like you said, you're fully aware of it. It's just that you're relaxed and you don't have to remember it. That's the thing. There's no pressure on you.
Sure. Yeah, that just occurred to me. I was like, oh, like that would really suck to like have like all these amazing orgasms and then wake up and be like, well, that was fine.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that that's not the case.
It could be an awkward conversation, couldn't it?
Yeah.
Like you wake up, all of the symptoms of having had a lot of orgasms are right there, and you don't remember any of it. Yeah.
That would be rather concerning to me. I'd be like, what happened?
Yeah.
Well, going back to the BDSM and kink, and I'm really interested. You said that you used to do this on cruise ships, and I'm not familiar with the cruise brand, I guess. The cruise line. It's a cruise line, not a cruise brand, Rachel. The cruise line that you were talking about, it's specifically for like sexy things.
Yeah. So Desire Cruises and Resorts is they're based mainly in Mexico, and that's where the resorts are, at least, and they've done some gorgeous cruises. And yeah, that's for basically the swinger community, the lifestyle.
That is so cool.
Yeah, so you get these cruises full of happy, friendly, naked people. And honestly, when I first went, because I went from a very, I had a deep religious indoctrination as my upbringing. So then I went to getting this gig, and I'm flying over to Rome to do the pre-cruise event. And I was like, what's going to happen to me? Pretty young thing, all these like people around, like anything could happen. But honestly, it's the most friendly and respectful community that I've ever come across, right hand in hand with the kink community. Like I've had people ask for permission. Like we had a great chat, and they're like, "Oh, it's been great talking to you. Can I give you a hug?" And it's just so sweet and so honest. So yeah, that was so world opening for me, to see people who are just owning themselves, and none of this kind of dancing around their desires or denying their own desires, but actually embracing it and finding a place to feel safe to express what you desire. And it just seems so important.
That is so cool. And it's so cool that you got to, heighten the experiences of those people by
Yeah.
bringing erotic hypnosis to them as well. When it comes to the kink community and the BDSM community, I said we would get there. So let's dive into that.
With anticipation.
Yes. They, it's about power, control, and submission, right? Like just, I mean, I'm just guessing, I'm surmising. But yeah, walk me through that. And do you teach people how to do it so that they can use it on their partners?
Yeah, so there are a couple of ways of doing this. One of the ways is kind of from the physical into the mental. If you imagine a spectrum, well, on the one side you've got physical, and on the other side you've got mental. A lot of people approach, they watch 50 Shades of Grey, they think, oh yeah, floggers might be fun, let's buy those, and so we'll have a go with that. And they're experimenting on the physical level, which is which is fine. Because of my background and my interests, I was right the other side. I was like, what's going on inside people's minds when you go into that place of what you call subspace?
Absolutely.
What's happening there? Because that's the thing that seems to be important. The submissives I've worked with in the past, you could have been flogging them or tying them up. They really don't care as long as they end up at that place.
Right.
The other things are just window dressing. And, like I say, there's a spectrum, and there are things that we enjoy more than others. But the state of going into that pure bliss of just totally letting go, that's where the real magic seems to be. So if I work with someone, I'll do a few things. Either I can teach someone how to, let's say a dominant, I can teach a dominant how to include and incorporate hypnosis into the way that they play. Okay. I'll teach them inductions, teach them how to do it, sensation enhancement. It's fairly easy to learn when you're taught right. The other side, if let's say a submissive comes to me and wants to experience that, I can give them things like a subspace trigger, for instance. We always hear triggering as a bad word, right? But imagine if you could design your own triggers that actually make your life better.
Sure, like a safe word, but like
the
opposite. Like a trigger word, but like not in the bad way.
Exactly that. It's like if you have a state that would be really, really powerful to you, public speakers do this a lot. In NLP training, we learn, if you've got a public speaking thing, you might set up a confidence anchor, they call it in NLP. So where you fire off this anchor, and then all these positive, confident feelings come through, and you're just, you've primed yourself to have a great time. Imagine if you could do that for the feelings you want. If it's being able to just shut out the outside world and be completely present with your partner. Or if it's to be able to go into that subspace and really just get there quicker, which then means you can go deeper. That's so there's a lot of demand for that. So giving people the experience, but then giving them the control of that, much Sure. like with the lady I mentioned earlier, where, because obviously I don't need 500 girlfriends who can only experience this with me. That's no good for anyone. And so I want to give the control back to them, so that then it's a gift that can be shared with their partner or partners of their choice. So giving them the experience, developing the ability, and then letting them know, look, here's how you can use it on your own, and here's how you can share it with a partner who may be a fantastic dominant or may be great in all these other ways. They just don't have this. Here's how you can kind of show them the ropes, as it were. You'll excuse the pun, and and help them work it out.
That's fantastic. I love that this can be like a supplemental tool. Whether you want to deepen that relationship, and so many different types of people can use it. You don't need to be into like kink or BDSM. You could just kind of be a person who needs to create that like safe space,
Yeah.
kind of like the spa day, thing. Um, Now, what about trust? Because I imagine trust is a huge, huge, huge component of this. I mean, you have people who might never have had an orgasm. You have people who may have experienced trauma. How do you go about making people feel safe being vulnerable?
Yeah, that's a great question. Part of that is just by virtue of kind of who I am, which sounds arrogant, I guess, but I've just found for the longest time that when I speak with people in a very short space of time, even if I don't tell them what I do, they'll just naturally begin to open up to me.
Sure.
And just
Yeah.
share all these things, and it's like, wow, I met you 5 minutes ago, and you're talking to me about, erectile dysfunction or something,
Right,
and
right,
it's I'm fine with it, and I guess that's the point. So right from the off, the space is created where it's like people just know instinctively that, look, there's nothing you can say, there's nothing you can confess to that would shock me. It's just, I can't conceive of something that would cause me to judge a person or to be, reactant. And so as soon as they realize that they actually have the permission to just be human, and that whatever they're experiencing is totally okay and normal, then that's like an oasis in a desert. We go through life so afraid of people's judgment, and rightly so a lot of the time. A lot of the time people are very judgmental, and they can be very catty and very, just not pleasant. So we've learned that for a reason, that, look, the world is full of people who are waiting to judge you. Now, that's not to say that we should hide behind our shells, but it's not for no reason we've arrived at that place. But the flip side of that coin is that as soon as you find yourself in a conversation where you are safe, and where you just know that this person's going to hold that space for you and be totally accepting of you, and is in fact there to serve you, then that's like such a relief. It's like a breath of fresh air. So yeah, I tend to find that there are two things. One is the trust of me. The other is the trust of the process.
Sure.
So the trust of me tends to happen within the first, before we even start working together, just in conversation. And then the trust in the process, that's, after the first session or so, when they have a great experience, then it's like proving that to yourself. So that builds as the experience continues.
That's a great answer. And I totally understand that. I'm the same way. I meet people and we're talking about their deepest desires within
well
5
that's why you're a good podcast interviewer, is that you create the space where people can open up, and it's like, wow, you're actually asking questions, and I have the chance to answer them. It's how many conversations have you been in where people just want to listen to you, and they just want to, like, socially we don't get that at all. So yeah, when you create that space where, hey, talk to me, tell me about it, and I will, not only will I not judge, I will be your cheerleader through it. Even if we're not saying those words, when you're having that vibe, it really comes across.
Definitely. And I think that's what like makes this entire area of like, sex, relationship, psychology, dating so interesting, is that like it's a deeper subject. It's not just like, the weather or however the sports ball is doing, that particular week. It's deeper. I have no interest in surface level conversation. I do it when I have to for my job, or, when I first meet somebody, but if we can move into the nitty-gritty stuff like as soon as possible, that's what I want.
Yeah. Skip the small talk, give me massive talk.
Exactly. So yeah, well, that's fantastic. I'm trying to think. Do you just want to give me a brief overview of like the services and what people can expect when they, sign up for a session with you?
Yeah. So there are a few things that I have available. I work with people live one-on-one, and generally that's over a period of time just to achieve whatever they want to achieve. So we'll work through a process, and it's all tailored to them. So that's very much a case-by-case thing. But also, when you go to my website, there are some pre-recorded sessions and classes and experiences there that you can take yourself through. One which is on the main page is the Erotic Ascension program. And that's 6 sessions going through just a really reliable theme, from going into this place of inner peace all the way to letting go of the old baggage, and then tuning into pleasure and using your own sense of pleasure and sensuality as a fuel source for your life, where it's, rather than it being a recreational thing on the side, it's something that actually makes your life better throughout. So that's 6 sessions. There's video classes and then the hypnosis to listen to. And at the end of that, we have a one-on-one session together where we can tie it all together and actually tailor it to you. And on the other side, there's a 3-session program called the Embodiment Codes. And this works on 3 areas. It starts with embodiment, so making friends with your own body and making your body feel like a safe place to be. Because many people don't have that.
Right.
Even if they've not been traumatized as such, with society and media ideals and all this stuff, it doesn't feel safe. So making friends with your body and being in there. The second one is empowerment, which is where you find the areas of life where we've given our power away to other people who don't deserve it, and then you reclaim it, and you bring it back to yourself. And then the final session is eroticism, which is where you take that friendship with your own body, you take the empowerment that you now feel, and you can plug that into your sensual self. You can begin to access these feelings as, an enhanced sense of empowerment. It increases a lot of pleasurable states, sexually, and just in general, just the enjoyment that can come through your life gets radically enhanced by creating this alignment with yourself. So that's shorter. That's 3 hypnosis sessions and some workbooks, so you can actually go through and understand what's happening within you as you make these changes for the better. So between the live things and between the pre-recorded things that you can do at your own pace, that's the kind of selection that we currently have up.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's so many good things, and you have things for individuals, you have things for couples. So whatever the situation, there's something there for you.
Yeah, ready for anything.
Well, Jonam, do you want to let people know where they can find you, where they can, follow you on the internet? Any other last things? Just throw it on out there.
Awesome. So the website is eroticascension.com. So eroticascension.com. I hope I spelled that right. That'd be
if they
awkward.
didn't, it will be if you didn't, it will be in the episode notes anyway. So
wonderful.
I'll find you.
eroticascension.com. And the Instagram handle is just that as well. It's at Erotic Ascension. And you'll find all the stuff there. You can send a message across. My email address is just jonam@eroticascension.com. So I'm very accessible, very easy to get hold of, and very happy to talk as well. You often find that people have a lot of questions about this kind of thing. So we've covered some of them here, but it's a whole rabbit hole we can explore.
Definitely. It's something that I think when people hear about it, their interest is piqued. And oh my gosh, I have to tell you also that I almost wept of happiness when you used piqued in your bio and you spelled it correctly, because I feel like people never use it correctly, and if they do use it correctly, they spell it incorrectly. So I was just my little English major heart was so happy to see that.
We've got to get the peaks right.
I know, right? So yeah, I feel like, first people's interest is piqued. And from there, they might be a little like wary and then they might be a little bit scared. So putting this out there is an option. People can hear about it and realize that maybe you're not losing as much control as you originally thought. Maybe you're the one in the driver's seat the entire time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that it's safe, it's sane, and it's actually beneficial. It's something that empowers you. The more you go into the session and really engage with it fully, the more empowered that makes you everywhere else in life. So that the trade-off is relax and feel bliss for an hour, and then everywhere else in your life you're going to be more powerful and more confident and have more of what you want. Where's the real sacrifice? There isn't one.
Yeah, no, and it's all in the name of connecting body, mind, and spirit, and getting more in touch with who you are. So it's a win-win in my book.
And in my book too, we agree.
Well, Jonam, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. I feel like I just had a lot of questions just because I didn't know much about this. So I am really interested. I'm going to follow you on all of the socials so that I can keep up with you and maybe sign up for something myself one day.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I look forward to seeing you there.
All right. Well, thank you again, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Jonam. And this has been Wine, Dine, and 69. I'm your host, Rachel Dalton, and let's keep talking.